Hello everybody, my name is C. Stephen Blue, and first of all I want to say thank you all for coming out today. You are the reason we are here. Your support of our event is what makes it so successful, and so I just want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy our event today. We have a very exciting event for you today, a special book launch reading for Terra Incognita, and I was going to hold one up. Somebody hold up the book there. Terra Incognita, and it's the 2019 anthology of Oregon poets. Several of our Eugene poets, along with other Oregon poets, will be reading some of their work from the book today, and this will be followed by our usual open mic. And that's Bob Hill back there in the cowboy hat. Him and his wife Emily are the publishers of Terra Incognita, and they have books back there, so we encourage you to get one. Lots of good poets in there. How many? 42? Yes. 42 poets. 42 Oregon poets. Okay, I am now going to turn over the mic to Emily Rush Hill, who's the editor of Terra Incognita, who will give you more information and guide us through the readings from the book. But first, I want to read you the bios she sent me regarding the anthology. Terra Incognita, Oregon poets write for ecological, social, political, and economic justice. Bob Hill Publishing, LLC, is delighted to have its second poetry anthology, Terra Incognita, featured at Burning Down the Barnes for a special book launch event. The first anthology, Moments Before Midnight, was released in 2018. The two books are dedicated to ecological, social, political, and economic justice. The cover, as you've all seen, depicts an indistinct figure moving into darkness away from the light. The future can never be known, but it is more uncertain now than it ever has been as we clamber over the unstable terrain of growing political unrest and climate change. Poetry in Terra Incognita touches on the emotional leftovers of war, abuse, the unjust treatment of people of color and immigrants, homelessness, wealth inequality, climate change, the pervasive division among people within the United States, gun violence, and more. Reading their poems from the book today will be... Oh, you know what? I'm going to just let Emily give you that info. So, the 42 poets, Oregon poets in the book come from all across the state, expressing their concerns and hope for a better future. Terra Incognita also contains poems in Spanish, the native language of several of the poets from Mexico, Colombia, Puerto Rico, and Spain. So, with no further ado, please welcome Emily Rush Hill.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Charles and Barnes Noble for hosting us. As he noted, this is the second time we've had one of our books featured here, and it's a delight to be back. I'd also like to thank the poets who submitted their work and entrusted us with their poetry, because without them there would be no anthology. So we're going to start right off with, where do you go? Stephen! Stephen will lead the poets. He is a producer, publisher, poet, performer, has been published in 12 countries, interviewed on television and radio, and in literary magazines. His publishing company is Arrowhead Press. Stephen.
I'm back. So my publishing company is actually Arrow Cloud Press, but that's okay. And Emily's letting me read first because I'm kind of under the weather, so I'm going to leave, and my co-host Charles is going to continue on. But I'm going to read one of the, I had 3 poems accepted for this anthology. I'm going to read just one of them today. So these are streaming poetic feelings I had while watching the televised live broadcast of the Congressional War Report on Iraq. April 8th, 2008, the Bush years. The War Report. The ego dynamics of regression are the province of rhetorical speak, the directly proportionate attitude of the surge they always seek. because truth never seems to win over their lust, greed, and pride. Our evolution has fallen by the wayside. A robust diplomacy is a long-term non-reality against a unilateral purge of reason in this ominous political season. The view that is required has subsequently expired. The agreement to be pursued has been subdued. The ongoing relationship between the owners and the management is all they deem sufficient to proceed. Approval by the people is either null or undesired. The testimony of any witness is simply retired. There will not be a compromise. No level of peace will arise. In strategic terms of circumstances, nothing but these language dances. Just like Orwell said, it's the newspeak language of doublespeak. You know who drank the Kool-Aid if it's the truth you really seek. And in the end, it's unreachable. Their politics, unbreachable. To any man of reason, it's impeachable.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up, excuse me, is Jim Higgins. He was born in Texas and grew up there and in California. He served in the Army from 1963 to 1965. He's a graduate of the University of Oregon with a BA in English. He has had poems published in OPA's, the Oregon Poetry Association's Verse Weekers. Jim.
Thank you very much. That was a hot, smoky August night.
Into the mic.
Oh, okay. It was a hot, smoky August night in 2018, and I was mad. I was mad about the southern border and all the stuff that was going on there. Still am. But so I got my pen out and I started writing, and this is what came out. I call it chaos. We get it now instead of rain. It spews.
Oh, we can't hear you.
You can't hear it?
Move the mic.
Okay. All right. All right. Is that better?
Better. Yes.
Better. Okay. All right. Chaos. We get it now instead of rain. It spews in tweets. A small, cruel mind on Pennsylvania Avenue, roaming the White House halls, 3 a.m., sleepless, fearful of being found out as a fraud, 6th grade show-off, bully of the week, loud, bragging of accomplishments only dreamed of in brief, troubled sleep. Those aliens, those with nothing, what easy targets. Yes, rapists, gang members, thieves, each one targeting an American, defended only by the dregs, those fake news conspiracy criers, hateful doubters of the new order I have brought. Barricade the border, stop them, strip them of what little they have, take their children, scatter these urchins across the country, bar communications, try those parents, jail them. Damn the courts, black-robed traitors to the Constitution, standing in the way of the truth, my truth as I see it, my facts, indisputable. Ask those who elected me.
Wow.
Thank you, Jim. Next up is Carol Hoddle. She is a writer, teacher, and dancer who writes poetry, short stories, and teaches poetry to adults and children. Her dance writing has appeared in Arterial, and her poetry in Sing, Heavenly Muse, Farm and Ranch Living, and Highland County Journal. Carol.
It's a really great magazine, beautiful pictures. So just with that, you'll probably get this feeling that the farm connection to me has a lot to do with who I am. I'm from a farm in southern Ohio. And the 3 poems that I have been honored to have in Amelie and Bob's anthology do have some reference to the farm. The first one I'll read is called Smile Shadows at 12:30 noon. The middle one, Bobby, I'm going to read that on the open mic list because it's pretty long. And then I have my poem, Kent State, May 4th, 1970. Smile shadows at 12:30 noon. The sun shines off your crisp whites as you stand so tall, so proud, in front of the Chesterfield sign in the drugstore window. I was hardly a gleam then in your eye. Before you then was war and proving yourself at the controls of a B-25. Before you the roar of engines, bombs dropping, and the quiet of the dead in lands so far away from this small-town drugstore on a summer afternoon, with your crisp whites unspotted by the camera's eye, and your smile as wide as a Chesterfield man's behind you. You came back knowing so much more, that so many eager young men were no match for war, that it was not by your strength you survived. A small child does not see fear in the man in white, standing spotless in the noonday sun, with the shadow as tall as God. A small child does not hear the whine of bombs, the roar of twin engines, but the waking sounds of morning on the land, where dew disperses by the sun. A small child sees the man in white labor on the land, smells his sweat, divines the questions. So many answers unspoken, so many things wanting to know. What is war and how and why we go through it? How that sharp cold piece of shrapnel, once hot, burst through the cockpit window. How it just missed, and having missed, how lucky. Or whether there is some future price to pay that those it did not miss have already paid. A small child wonders how it is that so much love, so much need cannot protect us from this. Kent State, May 4th, 1970. My epigram is Tin Soldiers and Nixon Coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. 4 dead in Ohio, from Neil Young, Ohio. From the shadow of the arch, I look out to where green grass stretches, rolls out of sight. I stare as though I can reach back to that day, May 4th, 1970. This is where it happened, where the Ohio National Guard shot students protesting the Vietnam War here at home, on campus exercising free speech. I graduated that year from high school in Ohio. It frightened me to know my brother might go to that smoldering war, to hear my parents say, "Don't get into those marches when you go to college in the fall," to see that's how you can get shot here in Ohio. I have always grieved this, didn't know what to do, encased then in my own survival, yet caring, caring, caring. I finally stand at this green, hear the echo of their voices return, still shouting, screaming, the horror of the carnage. Still, still. Thank you.
Next up is Joshua Mertz. Joshua has had poetry published in Harper's Bazaar Filmmakers Newsletter. His short stories have appeared in magazines and journals.
Thank you so much. Hey, the mic's at just the right height. Okay. It was quite an honor to be published in this. Thank you so much, Emily. I have one moment, please, while I don the glasses. I want a nictitating membrane that is cut to my, but they don't do that yet. Okay, it's called The Greatness. Last night, they took the poets away for speaking another truth, for being loud, for accusing those in power of deeds which can no longer be proven. The professors had already been taken, the historians and purveyors of critical thinking, bought, co-opted, or threatened, spirited away to a place of acceptable truths, ones approved by the true citizens, the ones who voted correctly, the ones who knew that history is not repeated, only improved on, something the historians would object to if they were allowed to object. The people of color retreated long ago to their enclaves of poverty, allowed small jobs among the true citizens, the ones who wrested from dark hands this great nation. Many dared not complain, for they had a foreign tongue. They spoke a strange language, as did the poets, who are now gone, who must learn to guard their thoughts and be quiet, lest they be taken even farther away. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Next up is Mike Schuler. He is retired from careers in education and psychology. He is working on a volume of poetry and a novel of the future for young readers. He says, "Writing has been a way for me to give order to what frequently seems to be a chaotic world." Mike.
Thank you, Emily. I'll read two from, I have three in this volume. I'll just read the two shorter ones. If you want to see the third one, you need to buy the book. World Wide Web. We are networked in webs and chains, reliant on each other for food to sustain our lives, for shelter to secure our nights, for love and joy for children, and hope, or whatever makes us smile in whatever way we smile. Paths connect us like neurons of one brain and filaments of one body. We are linked on the earth, joined in our history, connected in the space of our one blue planet. Yet we selfishly live. We steal and waste and break things. Climate change. So matter-of-factly, we accept the effects of glacial melt and shift of Arctic shelf. So blasé, we say, archaeologists and paleontologists discover finds unknown until now, lying beneath the ice. Civilizations like ours, complete with culture and technology and art and religion and social mores, battlegrounds of those who fought for something or other just as we do now. Burial mounds of those who thought they knew their history and future, who were swallowed by the earth.
So our volume is all the way up. You could try to get close to the mic and project. People in the back will be able to hear.
Don't be afraid of a microphone. It will not bite back. But don't bite it either. Next up is Paul Suter. He earned an MA in English from the University of California, Berkeley. He also studied at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Paul has been a teacher since 1971, most recently at Chemeketa Community College in Salem, Oregon. Paul.
Yes, thank you. Thanks. I first want to let you know something that has recently happened that you are probably may be aware of, that low cod numbers in the Gulf of Alaska fishery for the first time has closed that fishery. And I mention that now because of some parts of my poem that I'm going to read that of events like this a year ago. In 2018, I experienced what will likely be the only time I will go on a cruise. I went with my mother-in-law, my daughter, and her 3 daughters through up along the inland passage of Alaska. From that experience, I wrote this persona poem in which mountains speak to us. We do not hoard our visions. Inside Passage, Alaska, Boundary, and Kitimat ranges. Our profiles, pyramids, pagodas, arrows, bridges, castles, faces, reveal our shared progeny and destiny. We follow your lurch and sway on cruise ships. You are passengers far above ocean currents and waves. We see heads bowed in prayer or to iPhone screens. People hoping for messages or headlines that bring peace or just the next page. Today we report, we question, we dream. Children are sent away from their homes during heavy smoke from overwhelming forest and grassland fires. The glaciers of Tracy Arm Fjord slowly melt and recede. They embrace the rock torso but lose strength to hold the body together. The Salish Sea supports no newborn orca for a 3rd year, crushing for the people who have known them for thousands of years and for later descendants of navigators and settlers. Probes 7 miles deep have found plastic which kills marine life and reduces oxygen released for breath on land. Dreams like those of a father and his daughter reveal 2 futures. The father forms glass, floating it into smooth promises. The daughter packs her car for a trip with her twins. She puts them in the trunk, travels to her destination, and there forgets about them. Which dream will guide you? Will you chant prayers with palms upturned? Will children return home to breathe sweet air under blue jay skies? Will you heed the warnings of glaciers everywhere? Will you know the whale's part in the play of ocean currents? Will you at last confront together the changing climate that makes windswept tinderboxes of plants and trees and warms the oceans?
Next is Joy McDowell. She's a graduate of the University of Oregon, often writes about people at the edge of society, those in rural, blue-collar areas, and pays close attention to the language and action of what some refer to as the lower echelons of American life. Joy.
Just a little tiny bit. Thanks. Can you hear me? Very well. Because I've got a big lifeguard voice, so I'll exercise it. I have 3 short poems in the book. They're pretty serious. If you want to hear something less serious by me, hang around for the open mic. I'm going to read my poem about Methuselah. Okay. The first poem I have in the book is called $10 a Ton. The upriver transfer site accepts my garbage, packaging material that is wasted on me. I don't need apples and plastic nest, or my new toothbrush sealed and accessible only by a blowtorch. I think I could have added on a bedroom using the stiff and stubborn retail boxes and cartons that I throw away. I tell stores to keep their shoe boxes. Then my grandson needs a shoebox to build an international diorama. Those floaty white styrofoam packing specks are the worst, adhering to floors and carpets. Appliance boxes were once the size of coffins. Now, new refrigerators are swaddled in copious yards of translucent padding. 5 grandkids rip and tear at Christmas gifts. The wastebasket fills up. The garage overflows. The lid won't fit on the garbage bin. In the old days, people died of consumption, tubercular congestion in their lungs. The new plague of consumption resides in congested landfills and the islands of plastic bobbing on the sea. $10 a ton never quiets a guilty conscience. The next one is called Tattoo of the Backward. And you have to know I grew up in Cottage Grove. They are the same mouths who in the 1950s spoke rotten about teachers and doctors, educated people who brought serious messages into lowbrow places. The chip on their shoulder was big enough to crush polite conversation. They had the answers, just do away with the smarties and let the good old boys and their dollies run the show. That was the 50s. Now they own a political party and love the microphone. They toss manure right and left. I didn't like them back when they hunted reds in small towns and Hollywood. I don't respect them now. Ignorance, especially willingly acquired, is the tattoo of the backward. If America doesn't pick up the pace, chimps will catch up and grab the stage from the reckless orangutan busy ripping at the Constitution. Woo, woo. I don't hold back. And the last poem I have in here is called Not Much is Easy. Not the math problem, the meth problem, the diatribes in the Capitol. Struggle is how we make an inch of progress and then fall back beneath the cacophony of hate. Hate is easy. Just blame someone else for bad outcomes, for crowding, for losing out at the front of the line. Just blame. Resentment grows in any garden with enough hot manure heaped over the breathing holes of oxygen-starved roots. Brains cook easy. Modesty counts for nothing. Humility dies a quick death in a hail of braggart bullets. Hope resides in the soil, the same soil patriots have trod upon. The mouth-to-ballot battle will not be easy, but America must hose off the front walk and prop up porches to protect our country. Thank you.
Next is Charles Castle. He returned to creative writing after a career in healthcare and construction. He has 3 books of poetry, but he says what gives him the most pleasure is having a poem in a stairwell of a parking structure as part of the city of Eugene's Step Into Poetry installation.
Yeah, I want to thank Emily and Bob in particular for what they do to support Oregon's poets and what they continue to do. Yeah. Shrinking vivid. Not far from here are wetlands. Meadowlarks, ducks, harrier hawks, tall green grasses. We walk the berm where rusted rails divide. A creek drains a city. Car-cluttered roads border in 4 directions. Jets fly low and press the land, a constant migration of metal wings. We shrink inward even as sun and moon fill the sky. When I was a child, I played in nature. Days passed with their seasons. Where are the undivided places? Where are the songbirds now and all their vivid colors? By our minds apart, weeds overgrown in the gardens, grasses choke peas and beans, nature provides unevenly. We must till the soil. Below mountains we farm valleys. We search skies and watch for weather, kneel at harvest cradle days. Time passes, we grow old. Living things rise from a natural world where nothing is separate, but by our thoughts, what is to become of us?
Next is Panina Avatasali. She is the author of Sourcing Siapo and her recently published chapbook about post-election poems titled Summon, My Love Letter for the People.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? Pretty well. I'll use my swimming pool voice? Okay. Thank you, Amelie and Bob, for publishing this anthology and organized this reading. Thank you to everybody who has organized this reading. I'm going to read one poem. Oh, okay. I have 4 poems published, so if you want to hear the rest, if you like this one, please buy and support Oregon writers and Bob and Amelie. I can read one. I'll just read one. I'll read that one at the open mic. Okay. I want to dedicate this one poem to the people who are in ICE custody, the children who have died in ICE custody. Just recently, a 16-year-old has died in ICE custody, and all those fleeing for a better life, like we all got to be here in this country. My father came from Samoa, and my mother was a citizen here, and I feel very privileged and grateful to have this life here in America. I really do. I feel very privileged to get an MFA in literature from Mills College in Oakland. I just feel that I just feel very privileged as these days, these hours go on with the president who's occupying and destroying our world, basically. So in this poem, there's some Samoan words, and I wanted to just bring those out. Umu is the earth oven. It's in the ground, and it's where we cook our food when we have a feast. Vasa is the sea or ocean. Maguna is the mountain. I think I pronounced that wrong. Messina is the moon. Fetu is the star. Okay. And this poem is in 5 short parts, and it starts with an epigraph by James Baldwin. It is not a romantic matter. It is the unutterable truth. All men are brothers, all women sisters. 1. Is it the fluidity of light interlacing all to that gallant galactic vibration? Will the Earth's magnetic field shield our treasured blue jewel, our beloved Earth? If we are one blood, why all the bloodshed? If we forsake a child screaming in the dust, Families blockaded under bombed-out cities, banished from all livelihood. Won't the child's nightmare boomerang into our blood, stain our sheets? How can we sleep? In America, the short answer might be Lunesta. Take your sleeping pills like good little soldiers until the drug smothers what is humanely possible. It is a simple concept, but it has become extraordinary. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Yet the golden rule was a way of life long before the Bible seized our islands, preparing breadfruit, taro, and fish inside the umu. Father says treasure is in the practice of sharing. Cousin human, cousin vasa, cousin maunga, cousin messina, cousin fetu, cousin octopus, cousin coconut tree, cousin drum, 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 2. In Sweden, refugee children suffer from a resignation syndrome. Hearing the news that their family will be deported, the children go to sleep and they do not wake up. They do not move for days, weeks, months. They stay in a coma of despair. Depression shrinks the hippocampus, which triggers emotion and memory. And even if a family is granted asylum and they read the residency permit into their daughter's ear at her bedside, even if they read the residency permit into their daughter's ear at her bedside, she cannot move. She is like a mannequin. It will take months or years for her to learn how to hold her head upright, how to open her eyes, so she might see that her family is indeed safe in Sweden. 3. Our librarian, Mrs. Morales' face grows paler every day. She says people have every legal right to seek refuge from starvation, from drowning, from war, from violence. We've come this far. Why are we afraid to love? Some Americans have normalized the looming dictatorship raging at our borders. Under our watch, we witness children forced from the arms of mothers and fathers, while private prisons boom. Half the nation is diving into some cruel stupor, happily ripping wings off fragile, exhausted bodies. And the other half of the country, we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are fiercely sober. Cousin to cousin, poet to poet, student to student, teacher to teacher, neighbor to neighbor, senator to senator, demanding the return of what is now over 5,000 missing children. Mothers are wailing. The children are screaming, kicking their legs back into their mother's arms. I'd like to know what you would do to save your family's life. Our Amber Alert is a sham. Her child is in a warehouse in a cage in the land of incarceration. Mrs. Morales asks, how many more days? What happened to the special counsel? Why is coal mining waste allowed to poison our rivers again? The president sinks more every day, but he remains afloat like styrofoam. 5. Yes. And we are here, one rallying jamboree springing from that lasting spiritual reservoir, real as the countless stars, providing a pathway for us back to haven the vulnerable and the sick. Here we leap forward to save the life of another. Our own life depends on it. Love one another is extraordinary. The sovereignty of the heart is glorious. Here we think urgently, so we gather, we lead, we dig, we reconstruct over again the Underground Railroad. Here is where we become human, harbor. That is the moment we become civilized.
If one of the poets catches your attention,
please purchase the book through them. All the profits from this book go back to the authors if they can sell them. So please go to the author.
I got it. I'm the next poet. And my bio is written in the third person, so I'll read it the way it's written. Emily Rush Hill is a writer and artist. She has written 4 science fiction novels as well as poetry, essays, and short stories. She is a member of the OPA and Mid-Valley Poetry Society and is a regular participant of the weekly Salem Poetry Project. I always speak in the third person. Okay, I have 3 poems, but I'm going to read one that I initially wrote almost 30 years ago. It was a response to the spotted owl controversy and lumbering, and it's kind of sat there, and I've rewritten it a bit, and this is what it is now. Indicator species. Do we ask so much, oh spotted owls, ye indicator species? We merely want to cut the trees. Is that so bad? Renewable resources. Is that a tree? Or you? And what is it with trees? Creators of oxygen. Trees are beauty, home, and soul. Standing in dirt so thin that rain easily washes it away. For eons, great forests burned, blew down, or died of drought, and then their bodies remained to nurture new growth. Now they are ripped up, taken away, and the broken pieces burned, exposing land, leaf, and animal to instant violation. Renewable resource. Which is the indicator species? The timberman lost his job because of improved machinery, because of recycling, poor economy, because of owls. If you set aside a piece of land for the owl and the lumberman, which will deplete their forest first? No longer is a man's worth relevant because it is measured by the size of his paycheck, and once the only payment was life. We are the indicator species. We indicate destruction, disease, pollution. We indicate ignorance and arrogance. We indicate politics. We indicate tightly held dominion. We do not own the world. We cannot hold power in our hands. We share all power with the owls, whales, and wolves. We share it all. When the rain no longer falls, when unchecked radiation from the sun burns and mutates skin cells and seeds, when there is no water, food, or air, who will be left to make speeches, to till and toil, to teach the children? Who will be left to hear the mother planet crying silently to darkened skies for all of her children? The bees, the elephants, the trees, the birds, the man. For so long the man believed in tomorrow, in goodness, beauty, love, learning, logic. But he did not stay his heavy foot. He replanted, excuse me, he replanted too few trees, charged to the future, borrowed on time, took too much, left too little, no credit left, can't pay, no job, broke, homeless, hungry, gone. And to end on an up note, I'm going to read another poem that's called Who Saves the World? The universe exploded into the void, scattering energy, coalescing particles into atoms, into matter, into living potential, revolving into stars and planets, evolving into microscopic life. It was hurled forth by what some would call God or physics. A splendid and varied creation, and on this small and mostly insignificant orb, there has arisen abundant life. The planet's core, its heart, pulses with fire, heating the mantle, its bones. The uplifted mountains sing with joy against the wind of ages. But it has been overtaken by a strange and invasive species, possibly alien to the world, whose sole purpose seems to intent on obliterating everything unlike itself. And among this species are those who would even eliminate others of its own kind, some of whom believe the planet will be saved by war, by muscle and might. But if it is to be truly saved, redeemed and made whole, it will be by those who love, by poets and dreamers. Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break and then come back for the open mic. So talk among yourselves and support the anthology, please, and we'll get started.